And spawning in the upper right, in the red, he is, of course, the Teamless Zerg player from France. Give it up for Stephano.
And spawning in the bottom left, it's our blue Protoss player for Cascade Esports. This is SKillous.
And now, of course, the question here, Rushy. Right now, there is no question, right? We have a Hatch Gas Pool Expand. We got our standard opener from Stephano, from SKillous. No 12 pool, nothing insane, no bits of shenanigans. And it's kind of funny, right? When we were sitting there in the break, you were sitting here, you're like, yes, Juggernaut, otherwise known as Zergnata, but that really feels like it's much more of a ZVT thing than it is a ZVP thing, because the way the meta is right now, I mean, it's no longer this game where the Zerg just gets to tons of bases and the Protoss is pretty happy about, well, it's not happy about that, right? Because their late game is significantly weaker. Now, I mean, if a Protoss player can get up to 4 or 5 bases, it feels like that matchup is still, even with the meta innovations, even with the idea that we're now going into a 7 infester meta for Neurals and things like that, it still does feel that the Protoss is marginally favored in the late game. So I'm not totally convinced that the big maps are going to automatically favor the Zerg player here, or in general in the matchup. But I don't know. That's how I'm approaching things right now.
I would agree with you on that. Stephano's the kind of person, though, that I think could really easily upset the expectations of what we can see out of these players, because he's a crafty player. He's been around the scene for a very long time, and a lot of times when you have those storied players, sometimes they just pull things out that were from a previous time in their career, maybe a previous series, and you're like, wait a minute, what? That's not meta. That's not the thing that we see right now, and they just make it work because it was strong at one point, and sometimes just the element of surprise can make that big of a difference, especially on bigger maps. It's a quick way to score some victory points here. I don't think SKillous is going to at least let that happen at the onset of this game. It's going to be a Stargate opener as a result of it. So again, not surprising. Void Rays are more than likely going to be what comes out on the map here. And it's going to be interesting to see how we get to that mid and late game. Like you said, definitely not under-favored, but could provide for some interesting positioning just to get us there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think you're right. Of course, first or second Stargate unit will be a Void Ray. But the question after that is, where does that evolve into, right? We've seen, I caught a game recently that was a four Oracle Charge slot all in, right? We're starting to see a little bit more variation. Yes, the first Stargate unit almost always a Void Ray. It's just the replacement for the Phoenix. As is nice micro there from Stephano. Just make sure he doesn't lose anything. But again, we're seeing a lot more deviation from the norm here. From that, you get your 353rd base, you get your second Stargate at 410, you go on and you get 6 Void Rays, you get Storm, etc., etc. It seems like there's a lot more focus on ground-based tech now. I would not be surprised to see a second Stargate, but I would equally be pretty much unsurprised to see, again, the quicker Robo Bay going on into disruptors, because it feels like Protoss have kind of learned that Storm, as good as it is, now that we're no longer in a Hydroling Bane meta.
Game paused.
Now that we're no longer in that Hydroling Bane meta, getting that really early Storm is not nearly as useful as getting disruptors, right? Because Storm doesn't do anything to lurkers, not really. It's not nearly as good against roaches and ravagers as it is Hydroling Bane. So we are seeing those disruptors more. But as I say that, right before we got into the pause here, well, SKillous, let's get out of this. There we go. Well, I think we're about to, right as I'm like, yeah, let's not wait on this. Who knows? We're ready to go, so we're gonna get back in.
Yeah, it's a safe play.
Yeah, there we go. But yes, SKillous does have that second Stargate underway now. So at the very least, we will see 2 Stargates. We will most likely see 2 Stargate Voids. And it's really, again, where does SKillous go from here? And also, how does Stephano choose to deal with this? It feels like the Queen Walk idea is not nearly as popular as it once was.
Oh, but it's really strong on this map. You have those acceleration zones down the center, and if there was going to be a map that Stephano would pull this out on, it would absolutely be this one. But I'll have a funny answer to your question. You said where SKillous is gonna go after these initial gateways or stargates. He's gonna go right here. He's gonna go right here, and he's gonna bully this main base. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see Stephano put that layer down in the natural just to create a little bit more cushion on that. He's going to put it up in the main. Oh, that would have been a cool prediction, but but yeah, it is going to be very, very bullied. What's up?
It's going to be Spire. It's going to be Mutacorruptor. Mutacorruptor link against the Stargate tech.
I can see that. Baneling Nest going down is a good indicator of that, alongside the +1 melee. So yeah, good read on that. And I think this is a perfect example. This is like a Stephano-esque build. You think about Stephano back into the early 2010s. I mean, he's all about the Ling presence. How many times has he wrapped Lings around an arm and you're like, he's not going to be able to corner that off. He doesn't win with this. And then Banelings come and crash in on everything. And suddenly it's just a bunch of tears as his opponent types GG. So I love this. I think this is going to really lean into Stephano's play style, and it could work out really well.
Yeah, and I really like this. As we talk about the Spire tech, what happens there is we got 10 Banelings morphing out. Oh, aggressive Banelings. That's interesting. But that should get scouted, though. These are all going to get canceled on in rather quickly here from SKillous. There we go. Like, there is the full cancel on that. But I really like this Spire style, assuming that's what it is. This is something that we started to see Raider and Solar do just about a month and a half ago, where the whole idea is you understand that your opponent's going Stargate with the idea of getting on into carriers extremely quickly. But I'm also not seeing the Spire go down, so maybe that's not what this is. But anyway, to finish that thought, you go into carriers really quickly. Carriers do not fight mutas all that well, do not fight Mutacorruptor all that well. So you force your opponent to stay in Phoenix Void Ray, which is not nearly as powerful of a composition. And then you just make life rather difficult for them, and it just drips and drabs. Eventually it works out if you're comfortable enough with your control. That's not what Stephano's doing here, right? He's morphing in Banelings. He's looking for a bust. I mean, there's a Stalker here. The buildings will die before the Stalker does. And there we go. He's not even going to try.
Yeah, this is unfortunately, it's a bust of a bust, right? The first one got scouted and was probably going to be a little bit more effective before this gateway wall went up at the third. And then the second one just doesn't have any pressure. It's going up against a Stalker. You're absolutely right. Those buildings are going to take lots more damage than that Stalker ever will. So now Stephano has to try and pivot. Where's he going to go? He does get that Spire drop down back into the natural, but he wants to keep the pressure on here at that fourth base location. Lynx are going to be able to cancel that out, but that's a pretty low cost cancel. There's not a whole lot here that's going to be very vulnerable, but the fleet beacon, the third Stargate, oh, we're just gonna get into that. I told you, it's kind of a meme right now. It looks like we're gonna head straight to carriers.
I mean, I'm more looking at Stephano's production here. It's not the single Spire that I was expecting, right? You know, go into 15 mutas, get corruptors behind that. It's double Spire, and this is not a mistake, by the way. These are right next to each other. It's not the whole, did I build one? Let's build another one, right? No, there's a plan here. And this is new. This is not something I've seen from any player just now. Wow, that's not going to work on out. The Banelings, they roll in, they roll out. And actually, they're not even going to roll. Stephano's not even started Baneling speed in this game. And I feel like if you're going to be this Baneling committed, right? Baneling speed is what, 6 Banelings total? Well, he's lost 6 Banelings because they're not rolling anyways. I think that's about fair, right? I think he should have probably gotten Baneling speed here, but again, Stephano's the pro. Show me something new here, because double Spire before you even get the Hive off of Pureling Bane, that is new. That is not something I've ever seen. I'm excited to see what Stephano's idea is here and how well it is going to be able to handle a Disruptor carrier, because that's where we are. We already have +1 air attack done, which means these Void Rays can fight these Queens rather well, funnily enough.
Oh, and they're going to be able to dodge in and out as well. Flux Veins is about 2/3 of the way done here. The Voids are just on creep cleanup duty right now. And I mean, SKillous is doing everything he can to hunker this down. He's got 2 sets of gateway walls. He's limiting the access to that 4th base location. 5th base is already being scouted out, so more than likely that transition is going to be happening quickly here. It's odd to see a Protoss player expanding at the same rate as a Zerg player. Now, Stephano is going to toss down his 6th base here, but it's not a whole lot of saturation out at the 5th just yet. Okay, getting into Ultralisk Caverns, so he's just going to opt, instead of having the Banelings for crowd control, it's going to be Ultras. We're seeing that a lot more, and kind of varied success. When it works well, right? But if unfortunately it doesn't come together, it just seems to crumble. So Stephano's got to make sure to have a delicate balance with his air units. But the double Spire coming into play here, getting those double upgrades. So 1/1 flyer, attack carapace on the way. Lings coming out in high amount, and Vipers are going to be added into this mix. Stephano's already into late game mode. We're just hitting the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, but I mean, SKillous, he's not just in late game mode. He has his +1 carriers. He has a decent amount of them marauding on the left-hand side of the map. Looked like some damage is being taken on the right-hand side base that Stephano just tried to take. And he's got a big warp into the main base as well here. SKillous attacking on every front. Yes, this warp prism will go on down rather easily. That will get cleaned on up. And it looks like the Zealots on the left-hand side, they should be distracted by the ghosts of Spine's Past to be able to make sure that they don't get too much damage here. But still, Stephano, he's being run around just a little bit, and all this is doing is it is buying room here for SKillous to go. Remove creep, remove Stephano's map control. But Stephano's army is growing, right? He will have 1/1 on his Spire Tech very soon, and he does have 13 queens. I'm almost kind of wondering, so there's the style that Dark's been playing a little bit. It's Queen Infestor Corruptor. I wonder whether that's kind of the idea that Stephano is going for here, right? You just get a bunch of Corruptors, and yeah, they're gonna melt the storms a little bit, but A, there is no storm on the map right now, and B, well, there are queens underneath that have a lot of energy. With the lack of High Templar, it means these Corruptors will most likely never die. But with the creep cleanup, it becomes very difficult for Stephano to move out on the map to ever take a positive fight, as he will lose that 6th base.
Yeah, I just think it's so easy to get High Templar onto the field. Like right there. There's an 8 warp in of those high temps. There's going to be a few that go into Archons. Picking off that base in the top left corner, though. SKillous is doing everything he needs to keep Stephano metered on his growth here. But to your point, I really feel scared for Stephano at this point. SKillous has just gotten so big here, despite the fact that the armies are very even on supply. I don't know if they're equalized on the composition. SKillous has got a scary army here. This is going to be a first test of it, though. The Queen's going to be a little bit out of position. They have a nice concave, but you kind of want those together so they can transfuse. Here come the Corruptors, though. Corruptors are not able to get a decent engagement just yet. And underneath the Archons, they're going to be very, very vulnerable. But a couple of those parasitic bombs do connect onto the Void Rays on the right-hand side. 6 workers do end up going down. The cleanup happens on the transfer to the main, but the main army here at the 4th base location is very, very powerful to stop here. And there goes another base.
Yeah, the Skytoss army here for SKillous is not the scary. I mean, Skytoss always scary, of course, but it is the 7-8 Archons sitting beneath. It means that the Zerglings, they're not going to get close. It means even Ultras, they don't have the upgrades yet. They're not getting close. And SKillous, he's just marauding straight on through. It's funny, I pulled up the army value just before that fight happened. SKillous was double the gas count of his opponent here. The Ultras, they're going to pop out straight to their doom, getting targeted on down here. They cannot take this fight just yet. We have very few queens, only 7 queens left on the field here, as it now looks like Stephano is going for the fight. We're going to see Parasitic Bomb, and the sky is going to get taken down. I think that's not a question here, but it's a question about the ground. It's a question whether SKillous has enough to knock down the Ultras. Actually, looks like that answer is no. But actually, oh, never mind. I was totally wrong. The Skytoss will remain alive, but the ground will get knocked on down here. So the Corruptors just don't have enough, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Anyways, GG SKillous. He takes game 1.
Yeah, not a super surprising outcome here, especially with how laid back Stephano played. I was actually a bit surprised. Figured he was going to be a little bit more aggressive, but his opening, his Baneling run-bys both got scouted. Well, first one got scouted. Second one had to go to an inoptimal location. So the type of aggression that he wanted to start the game with just didn't work. So worked out really well for SKillous in game number 1. He's going to go to Romanticide for game number 2 and should have at least the map advantage. I think Zerg don't feel super comfortable on Romanticide, but how do you feel on Stephano's chances going into game number 2?
I think it very much depends on what type of build we do see SKillous go for, because as you mentioned, Romanticide, it is the progenitor of this build, of this two Stargate idea that Trap started, right? It was Oxide, or really it was Death Aura and Romanticide were the first 2 big maps that allowed you to really do that, and then it expanded from there. So yeah, if we see SKillous looking to play the same build that he played in game number 1, I think he is absolutely favored. But what I want to see from Stephano here, he went for the idea of the aggressive build, right? He went upgraded Lings, he went into Spire, and you're like, okay, right? You got to play aggressive with this. You get mutas, do something. You just can't sit back and hope you can beat a late game Skytoss army it's just so hard to balance things if you don't do any damage whatsoever. So if Stephano goes for the same build he did in that last game, I want to see those 14 mutos out. I want to see Zerglings, Banelings being aggressive everywhere. There we go. Okay, we got the countdown. I want to see this. I want to see him prevent SKillous from getting on into 8 Archons and, what was it, 6 carriers and a bunch of voids with +2. Because that is just, without doing any damage, right, without picking off on that army as it goes across the map, that is so damn hard to fight.
Yeah, so with Romanticide, I think that's going to be a taller order for him. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes out with a calculated build, but you know, SKillous could easily mix it up as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see him stick with what has already worked. And we'll have to see here as we jump into Romanticide for map number 2.
That we will. And spawning in the upper left, in the red, he's down 1 game in this series. Can he take it back here? The teamless Zerg player, Stephano.
And spawning into the bottom right, it's our blue Protoss player for Cascade Esports. This is SKillous. Oh, he's gonna get the second hatchery this time. All right. Doesn't have to run it out to the third base.
Look at that. I mean, when you go, or did SKillous actually go for hash block in game number 1? Or did he, did Stephano just go for the third base regardless? I didn't see.
I would say at that point it doesn't matter because he went out to the third base regardless.
Well,
so
yeah.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. Is there ever a situation where Stephano benefits from just going out to that third base location?
I mean, there's a lot of, well, yes, if you know that you're just gonna get hash blocked, you can optimize your timings a little bit more in terms of getting your natural down. If you just say, I'm gonna go straight to the third base, it's gonna be fine, versus I'm gonna look at the natural, I'm gonna see whether I need to go react to a hash block and then go over. It's 510 minerals, right? It's not that big of a deal. But at the highest levels, everything can be a little bit of an advantage there. So what we started to do, and it's a little bit more variable now because there's Protoss players don't always hatch block at this point outside of the meta where they were always doing it. For a while we were seeing Zerg players and they would just go and immediately take the third base. Wouldn't even care, wouldn't even look for the probe. They say, yep, third base, let's go. So that's what I'm wondering, whether Stephano did that in game 1 and then maybe looked at the replay and was like, yeah, actually SKillous didn't block that. So maybe I can get my natural down as I would actually like to get it down.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, Stephano didn't have to worry about that here in game number 2. He does get that natural down at a pretty natural timing, no pun intended. Stargate opening once again for SKillous. I honestly would not be surprised to see SKillous just run like the exact same build. There's this saying, if it isn't broken, why try to fix it? And in this case, game number 2 could just lead us into the exact same opening. But this is a nice map for adept timing as well. You could very easily open with the Stargate, get 1 Void Ray out, get your opponent thinking, and now the speculation is meaningless because we already have +1 on the way as well. So, yeah, I think it's actually going to be the same build, but maybe just like a minute faster because he's starting that upgrade right away.
Yeah, I would say the one thing, Rushy, is this is +1 before Warp Gate. This is the greediest possible Stargate opener because you're not going to have any ground units, not really. You're not going to have anything to defend yourself for a while. So out of this, we can expect to see a much later third base, like a 5, maybe even a 5:30, maybe even a 6-minute third base, depending on how things go. But on the flip side, it means your Void Rays are going to be so much more powerful. If you're able to survive and do that, it means that the Void Rays are just going to be able to absolutely slap down any sort of Kreen aggression. Because, you know, the way upgrades work, right? The faster your unit attacks, the more damage it does. It's why, or if you get multiple attacks, is why +1 is so good on Phoenix, why it's so good on Marines, but also why it's so good on Void Rays, because they just hit with so many damage ticks. I don't actually know what the number is per second, but they attack fast, so +1, it's extremely relevant, and it's actually kind of funny. It's Queens, they're good against Void Rays. Up to, you know, until you get +1, suddenly it's not anywhere close.
Well, and in the early game here, you're not going to have as many queens at your disposal. So I think that's a part of it as well. I mean, this is, again, like I'm having a moment here. Meme builds. We're just going straight into Fleet Beacon. Probably not going to be carriers just yet. More than likely going to be Flux Vein. But having that second Stargate still opens up the opportunity for SKillous to do this. But this does create maybe a bit of an interesting window. If Stephano can smell that this is coming, I think he possibly has a timing where he could throw down something really bizarre to just push across the map. He's going to get Roach Warren and an Evolution Chamber. A +1 speed Roach timing could be really powerful here.
Actually, so this build is pretty similar. There was a build that Zest was doing on Open Cups, and it tore up all the Zergs for like 2 weeks before they figured it out. But he was going for 2.5 base carrier, right? Similar idea. He wasn't getting +1 as fast, but again, it was carriers. And what we saw Solar finally figure out how to break it, it was a Hydra Queen Ling Nidus all in, right? Off of 3 bases, off of like 67 workers, off of 5 or 6 gas. And I mean, that works really well because there's just nothing on the ground here. That's what you trade off from Skillous, assuming that you deal with stuff early. So I don't know if roaches will work because again, +1 voids deal with roaches really well. They deal with low to middle number of queens very well. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but I would love to see some sort of Nidus play. But I almost wonder, so what are we, how many void rays are we at right now? We are at 2, so not all that much, but by the time Stephano looks to move out with anything, it's going to be 6 to 8 void rays. They may have +2, they certainly will have +1, and shield batteries will be down. I almost wonder whether Stephano has already missed his timing by not going into something, but you know what? He is at least somewhat aware of what's happening here. We have the Hydra Din going down. He is going to be able to, at the very least, maybe have enough DPS in this army to knock down this, as you called it, this glorious meme build from Skillous.
Yeah, +2 already on the way as well. So Skillous is just going to be really responding to this the way he needs to. Ultimately, I think a big oh, this is actually kind of rough here. Starting to pick off queens. You mentioned this very quickly. +1 voids, not going to have a problem dealing with these queens. The queens do have to micro away, but it's not really working out. All these queens are getting picked off. So many have gone down, 4 in total. He's gonna grab a 5th one. He can just dive on top of this mineral line here, Beowulf. He's got exactly the right amount of DPS here. He's gonna be able to target down that Spore Crawler. Lings are not gonna do anything here. Suddenly, this is just going from bad to terrible.
I mean, he does lose 1, right? The Hydras do pop on out here, but look at this position he's found where it's only like 2 Hydras fighting. Now, eventually the Hydra numbers will pop out, and eventually Skillous will be pushed back here. But any sort of Hydra, Queen, Nidus timing that we were talking about as a potentiality, well, it's gone, right? There are only 3 queens on the map. They won't, and even more importantly than that, they will not have the energy that they need to make sure that they can defend things. And of course, on top of that, I mean, Skillous, he has 3 Stargates now. It's triple Void Ray here. And yes, another Void Ray will go down. The 4th base will not die for the time being. The carriers, or excuse me, the Void Rays, they're everywhere. They're gonna have +2 in a second, and it is gonna be +2 voids versus +1 Hydras. That's not a fight I would ever choose to take as this base, and now we'll go down. The thick beams have been called.
Oh, this is just terrible damage. I don't even think Flex Tape can fix this at this point. This is a rough situation for Stephano. He's gonna be able to zone this out eventually, but again, at what cost? He's lost his 4th base location. He's gonna try and take it again, but it's gonna be so vulnerable. These Hydras are not going to be able to get the work done that they need to. If you're gonna go into Hydras, you want to find a way to be aggressive with them. You want to move on the map. You want to get that map control. He's got decent vision, but he can't really get anywhere. And these Hydras off creep and without their muscular augments, that's going to just be picked off. And now suddenly this army is much more aggressive to get on top of. This 4th base is going to be under pressure once again. 3 Hydras is not going to do it, and there go the beams again. Oh, Skillous is just overwhelming his opponent while he goes into 4 carriers at a time. This is terrible.
Yeah, Rushy, he's gonna have +3 air. He's gonna have +3 carriers before the 10-minute mark. That is kind of disgusting. My Zergy heart is making me a little bit sad. But on the flip side, this is a pretty cool build. This is not something I have seen before, at least at the pro level. I mean, you know, if I play on ladder, you run into weird meme builds all the time. But at the pro level here, in a competitive event, no, I've not seen this yet. But now Stephano, he realized that yeah, he's in a bit of a pickle. Maybe even more than a bit of a pickle. Maybe it's a live culture. He wishes he was alive. He wishes he was alive.
He's about 4 foot deep in the barrel right now. He's brining and everything. The lurkers are going to come out. Lurkers are going to be a nice response to try and deal with this. But I mean, to your point, there really isn't that much on the ground anyways. If anything, I mean, there's 2 adepts. two adepts. The lurkers are not going to be an effective way to really manage the expectations here. So Hydras are out in a little bit stronger number. We could very easily see a transfer into a little bit more ground army to help deal with the squishiness of this Hydra force, but I think SKillous is just going to continue cranking out those carriers. Stephano's going to take an opportunity to try and push here, though. I think it's mostly just to clear up that ramp. Fifth base is going to go down back behind it. +3, you're absolutely right. It's going to be done just before or maybe a little bit after that 10-minute mark, but what a powerful timing here for the Blue Protoss.
Now, the one thing, Stephano is finally starting to stabilize just a little bit. It's not easy, right? He still has this big army to deal with. He's only on 4 bases. He's just barely hitting Hive, but he's about to hit +2. He's about to hit +2 Carapace, which will nullify some of the upgrade power that SKillous does have. And in fact, one of the big reasons why, you know, +2 carriers are often such a powerful timing is more often than not. All right, and this has started to change. We are starting to see Zergs get Carapace more and more, but more often than not, the Zergs will just go for, you know, traditionally it has not made sense to go any sort of Carapace upgrades because overkill's a thing. It doesn't really work out. But, and also storms, and, you know, you don't really need Carapace against storms. But with carriers in particular, right, you do need that Carapace to soak down all the damage. But with the lack of infestors here, with the lack of microbial shrouds, and yes, I know that's a meme spell, it doesn't matter. In a game like this, that is making life a little bit more difficult, but here we are only on 20 interceptors. It looks like Stephano's going to try to get on top of these carriers. The interceptors, they're mostly gone. Stephano, he's going to knock down all the Void Rays as well, and he has carried this fight. Now there are Hydras coming on, and he should be able to get some abducts as well, and it looks like Stephano's going to be able to carry this fight. There are no interceptors on the, at least not enough. Where are all these interceptors? I guess they're coming in from the carriers that have just been made. But Stephano, he's going to kind of carry the fight. Not going to be enough, but he's going to kind of carry it.
Yeah, it was very good exchange here for those Hydras, and that's where the Hydras do thrive, right? They do a really good job trading out against interceptors if they've got something that can assist them, like the Spore Crawler Forest and the body blocking of other units. But I mean, that only lasts for so long, as unless you get a large amount of carrier kills on the follow-up, the carriers are just going to remake those interceptors. The Hydras are not going to be able to replenish as efficiently. Obviously, Hydras cost way more than an interceptor does to replace. But now you're just going to start falling into this dance. So we have to watch Stephano and see how he is going to try and recover and pivot out of this. We know it's just additional carrier production, 5 carriers at a time right now. Okay, those Vipers coming in from the left-hand side, those have a lot of energy. Those are going to be some good pulls. This is where those Hydras need to thrive. They've got to pick off some of those carriers, but they're going to sacrifice a lot to try and